unique milestone by taking the lead to raise $500 million US dollars for Indian Railway at a competitive price through issue of climate bonds, certified green bonds in the overseas market, which incidentally is the first of its kind for the railway transportation sector in an emerging economy like India. Right now, he's pursuing his own ideas and passion for institution building and academics. Welcome, Dr. S.K. Patnaik on our show. Dr. Patnaik, you have heard the report which I read. And the report very clearly says the intention or the intents of central government and many of the state governments are not clear. They say something like our oil minister or our finance minister, everybody says we are interested, but few of the state governments are not interested. But they are hiding the name of those few state governments. We should know whether they are ruled by BJP or by opposition parties, so the public can take the action in the forthcoming elections. But we have to understand whether they are right. If they feel that petroleum products should not come under GST at all, they should be forthright. They must be honest to say, we are not bringing in GST for next election of parliament, that is up to 2024, because we require funds for purchasing of many things or providing the vaccine or whatsoever reasons they want to give. But to keep public in dark, just saying that we are interested, others are not interested, but the report says something else. The center is, when they can extend the tenure of CBI director or the ED director for 5 years without the parliament consent, they can also pass an ordinance today to bring the petroleum products under GST. Nobody can prevent them, and that power and inherit with the central government to pass and come out with an ordinance. State government have no say about that. But to take out so much money, because as per one report, if it will come under the GST, the rate of the petrol or diesel will be approximately 50 to 60 rupees, which is going to be a very big relief to the public at large. Now, you being a person who has worked in the finance and especially with the public sector, with the government, and you have seen the working from inside, and you have seen how even the PSU works and how the government works. We would like to know your views on petrol, diesel, and GST. Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnaik, please. Please unmute. Please unmute. Dr. Patnaik, please unmute.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Goel, and good morning to all the viewers and my co-panelists, Mr. Kanan and Dr. Saab. Now, today's topic is quite relevant in the present context, especially when the fuel prices in the country is rising for last 1 year. Of course, just before the Diwali on the 1st of November, the government declared a slash on the petrol.
Sorry, Dr. Patak, 3rd November. 4th November was Diwali. Yes.
Sorry. Okay. 3rd November, the government declared for a price cut on petrol to the tune of ₹5 and the diesel to the tune of ₹10. And both these two slash in the prices on the fuels have a moderating effect both on the inflation and on the economy. Now the question remains is that in the face of the rising crude oil prices, Brent crude oil prices in the global market, whether India will be able to sustain this particular slash in the price, and specifically in the domain of excise duty and VAT, whether it can be retained for a long time, or maybe, as you have already echoed your sentiment, that it may be a political ploy only for the government to, soothe the mood of the public at last. Now, you must have seen the people's reaction from time to time during last 1 year when the petrol and diesel prices are going up. Nowadays, because of the social media, people are not shying away to, uh, express their feelings in no uncertain terms in all the social media platform. Now, recently, on one such social media platform, maybe about a month or so back, when the petrol and the diesel prices has gone up, I came across a very interesting, remark by one of the person who has basically correlated the rise in petrol and diesel prices to that of a cricket match. Now, Indians are very much obsessed with the cricket. So that particular person, he has something very humorous to state. What an innings by petrol so far. A well-compiled century on this difficult situation. You looked for a big one the moment you played the first ball. Equally supported by diesel. Great partnership by you too. It wasn't easy playing against the common people, but both of you have did it. Congrats and cheers. This is the type of humorous remarks or comments which are going on the social media, and you can very well gauge the sentiment of the people with the situation when there is a price rise. Well, GST is also coming into picture very recently because of the hue and cry all over the country. And as you know, in the Kerala High Court, some few months back, maybe in the month of September, there was a PIL filed by one of the voluntary organization, and Kerala High Court has passed an order to both the Government of India, the state government, and the Department of Petroleum, and the Petroleum Secretary of Department of Petroleum, to give the reasons why this fuel cost cannot be contained by bringing it under the purview of GST. And the matter was referred to the GST Council. Government, in their own wisdom, referred the matter to the 45 GST Council, which had a session on, I think, sometime in September, and they have come out with a recommendation that it's not the time to bring both the diesel and petrol under the purview of GST because of obvious reasons, because of the revenue dependence of both central and state governments on them. Now, when this GST was introduced in July 2017, 5 commodities, namely the crude oil, natural gas, petrol, diesel, and aviation turbine fuel, were kept out of its purview, GST's purview. And it's basically due to the fact that both central and state government depend a lot on this particular revenue they generate in terms of the excise duty and value-added tax respectively. So this was not debated, never debated in 2017 and till recently. Maybe because during the Corona time and due to the the fall in the crude oil prices, even though there was increase on fuel prices from the government end, but it was never debated so fiercely as it is being debated now. Maybe in the 2017-18, due to the stabilization of fuels during that period, fuel prices during that period, the matter was not thought to be so sensitive. Now, due to the increase in global crude oil prices, courtesy the cartel, the OPEC cartel, and the economy growing up after the COVID lockdown during last 1 year or so, the fuel prices in our country is hovering at a record levels of, as you say, the century partnership between petrol and diesel has gone, and it's a different matter that the prices, there is a temporary relief in terms of bringing down the excise duty by the central government by a few rupees for petrol and diesel. But if you see during last less than 1 year or so, there has been 41 increases in the retail prices, but since April this year. So such frequent upward revisions in the fuel prices are definitely a cause of concern for the common people, and is one of the main causes of inflation in the country. And as you know, the inflation in the country during the last couple 2 to 3 months has gone above the 6% level, and that is when the central government has put a brake on the inflation by reducing, by giving this temporary relief of rupees 5 and 10 for petrol and diesel. Of course, this temporary relief will remain for some time to come, but one really doesn't know if at all the prices of petrol, this fuel goes up in the coming year. The whole thing will again be reverted back. There's every possibility of that. Now, as Mr. Goel has said, if you compare the base price of petrol is 44.40 paisa, and the base price of diesel 46. And when you look at the cost of petrol per liter or diesel per liter at today's price, after the reduction in the excise duty, even after that also it is coming in the level of 82 to 85 rupees. Some states is going up to 90 rupees. Now, as you know, the excise duty is levied by the center and the VAT is levied by the state governments on petrol and diesel, which constitute almost the same amount as that of the base price of the two commodities. And that is why the debate comes why the fuel prices would not come under the purview of GST Council to decide on the GST slab like other goods and services. Of course, it will be a great relief to the people of India if the GST Council at any point of time decides to rectify the inverted duty structure. But the moot question is that, will the GST Council, not now, at any point of time, will ever consent to this proposal, knowing very well that it contributes majorly to the top government revenue, be it center or the state. In my own assessment, it would be a very tough call for the GST Council at any point of time to reduce the rate of the fuel prices. Well, now the ball is in the court of the center and state. Center, as they have done it recently by reducing the price of both petrol and diesel, they can as well do it in the times to come. And if they have the guts to do it in the months to come and the years to come, possibly then, if there is a gradual reduction of excise duty and VAT both by center and state simultaneously at regular intervals, maybe at some point of time, the GST Council will feel comfortable to take this matter and bring it under the purview of GST. And GST, as per the current provision, the maximum of GST rate is now 28%. Now, when the fuel, the excise and the VAT together is almost 100% of the base price, it is a tall order for the government also to bring it down, knowing very well that government will lose a lot of revenue if they bring it down consciously. And they cannot do it unconsciously due to the fact that the entire Indian economy is very, very dependent on this fuel prices. One of the reasons is that 80% of the fuel, means the fossil fuel, are being imported, and 80 to 85%. And since a lot of foreign exchange is involved in importing oil, government, I don't think in the near future they will be in a position to bring down the rate to that extent. Now, you must have seen the recent downslashing of the price by, say, for rupees 5 for petrol and rupees 10 for the diesel has an impact of almost like the loss of revenue impact for the central government is almost in the order of rupees 45,000 crores. which constitutes almost 2.2% of the GDP. Now, if they continue to have it in 2022-23, the government will lose a revenue of nearly rupees 1 lakh crore, and which will almost constitute about 0.45% of the GDP. Now, which government can take a decision, even though there is all the time we have been hearing that the present cabinet is very much in favor of bringing it to the GST Council. It is always debatable or questionable how, in the best of their consciousness, government can go for such a step. And as I feel, keeping in view the new the elections which are going, assembly elections which are going to happen in 5 states or so, or because of the inflationary trend in the economy, the government might have taken this temporary measure, but is not going to sustain for a long time to come. Now, the best part of this fuel economy is that whenever a government is increasing the price of petrol or diesel, they don't even say whether the price of the base price of the fuel is increasing because of the rise in the Brent crude oil price, or it's decreasing because of that. The only thing which they always keep in view so far, this may be the only exception when the rates have been slashed, but be it the Congress government or be it the BJP government, whoever is in the power, they always try to look at this increase in fuel prices as a source of augmenting revenues. Whenever there is the fiscal deficit is more, and whenever they see that the non-planned expenditure is not going to be met from the existing resources, so central government always takes this measure. And same is the case with the state government. For ever since the GST has come into picture, the states have very little options to raise resources other than this VAT. And that too, the VAT on the fuels. So both central and state governments have hardly any options and to reduce the VAT and excise duty on the high prices of the fuel. But the fact remains that they always try to leverage on this particular fuel prices to gain the popular vote in their constituencies. And going by the fact that the last UPA government lost their power in 2030, one of the reasons was the inflationary trend in the economy. Possibly this present NDA government is also very cautious about the inflationary trend in the economy, which is happening mainly due to the supply side problem. Even though the supply side problem is over and the economy is in the upward trend, still then we feel we are finding the inflationary trend is going up because of this rise in crude oil prices and other essential commodities like the vegetables and dals, and other things like that. So in my assessment, I always feel that this particular thing, petrol, diesel, and GST, at this moment, both the things cannot be brought under the purview of GST, and not now, for a long time to come. And only when there is always a possibility that the non-conventional energy like the electric cars and the other transport means, if they are coming to the country in a big way in the next 4 or 5 years or so, and people change their habits of going for this consuming the petrol and diesels for the transport need, possibly the situation may reverse in the next few years to come. But at least for now, government can, I am pretty sure that of all the claims which they have been taking recently, Mr. Gadkari, in one of the Times Now meet, he has claimed that the government is always in a position to bring down the rate on excise duty on this year, provided the states come forward on the willingly to take this novel initiative of central government. But I completely believe that this is just a sort of hoax. This can never happen in a country where our economy is mostly dependent on the imported fuel. So I think the only way out that the government can take a stand is that they should be bold enough to gradually reduce this rate of excise duty in 2, 3 or 4 years, so that the states who are not coming forward to also come in terms with the center may also think twice because of the people's concern all over the country. And that is when possibly we can see the good time to come for a country like India. Thank you very much, Mr. Goel.
Thank you, Dr. Patnaik, for giving your forthright views. What Dr. Patnaik says that this is not, according to Dr. Patnaik, he feels that it's not possible to bring the diesel and petrol under the purview of GST soon because the loss of revenue. Although Dr. Patnaik is giving lots of examples, and he has also mentioned because of the international crude price. Although the international crude price is right now $80 to $85 a barrel, which is far less than the $140 US in the time of UPA. So to give that reason and to keep the prices so high is something which is not digestible. When the price gone down to 20 or 25 or 30 US dollar per barrel, the price was again the same price, rather more than what UPA regime was giving. But what Dr. Patnaik is saying rightly about, he has mentioned about Nitin Gadkari ji. Yes, I also saw that program, and Nitin Gadkari ji purposely avoided the question when he was asked, can you name those states? He just smiled and he says, please don't bring me on, drag me in that controversy. Now, this clearly shows that it's a double speak, it's a hypocrisy from the central government. They know very clearly that by heart they are not going to reduce the GST, but to just convince to fool the public at large, they are saying openly that no, we want it, but the state doesn't want. Thank you very much, Dr. Patnaik, for giving your views. I would like to tell Mr. Kannan that because Dr. Nimesh has to go and attend his medical things, he requested me to take him right now for 5 minutes, because his time is only now 5 minutes left. He has to leave immediately. So is it possible that I will take him, because as per protocol you are number 2? So okay, you are mute, but I can see that you are yielding. So I am now taking. My next panelist guest is Dr. Nimesh Ramesh Shah. Dr. Nimesh Ramesh Shah is the chief ophthalmologist at Asser Province, Saudi Arabia. He worked as an ophthalmologist in private and corporate space for 12 years. He is working as chief ophthalmologist with Ministry of Health, Saudi Arabia, since 11 years. Dr. Nimesh Shah, although you are a medical profession, but because you are in Saudi Arabia and you have worked with ministry and you know about the prices which are creating lots of havoc in India, we would like to know your views on petrol, diesel, and GST. Dr. Nimesh Shah, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. Thanks for having me on this platform. At the outset, So thanks for the faculty. It was really great listening to Dr. Santosh Kumar on the long elaboratives and the illustrations that he has enumerated. It was quite a trivial to get through that experience. Anyways, I wish to get into this topic and through some slides and keep it very simple and sinister in a way in terms of cross-correlative interaction, if it is possible. The slides seen through?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. We have lived through this order in the older periods where order and chaos were exactly contrarian. What do I mean? There was a specific amount of order which was being set in the socio-economic circles in the past, which resulted in lesser amount of chaos in the socio-economic circles. In the present paradigm, what has happened is order and chaos both have started complementing each other, resulting in something which we call as an orderly chaos. So the society is going through a mix where we generally feel due to language decay, as George Orwell, who was one of the best and a brilliant guy, was born in UK and who had talked about social nationalism in elaborative details, talks about this phenomenon at great strengths. I wish to talk on this topic through a small concept called as microcosm. Microcosm is basically nothing but a miniature encapsulation of a larger picture at stake. What do I mean? I mean, if you look at the human body, this slide over here would classically reveal it's a classical chromosomal DNA helix, which has been embedded by few DNAs, which actually regulate the which are the real epitomes of neurohormonal control of a human body. Similarly, for the topic today, I felt that the microcosms can be really split on certain subtopics as rightly product type, market systems, and its implications on the social constructs which we all are experiencing at the moment. The phenomenon of microcosm on the crude oil derivatives, we need to really get into the surface, as the slide on the left really mentions, that this is a corona spike protein virus particle which had created havoc in the past. Look at the subset of it. Let's look at the cross section of it. It is basically the genomic particles which are at the base, which are getting mutated and transmutated to really give rise to the various variants across of COVID-19. Similarly, the microcosm of the implications of GST on crude oil derivatives has undergone a lot of similar sort of twists and turns that the century has experienced in the past. Thanks to the Governing Council of OPEC, which right now has been monitored by 13 international countries. But what is the caveat? The caveat is this OPEC body has largely been an oligopolistic society. It's a party which has got extreme amount of powers, which has been focal with a few countries. Now, these type of bias which has created a serious amount of divine predicament for emerging economies and poor economies in terms of enhancing their fiscal deficits. It has shooted up, the inflations have skyrocketed, and just because countries like India and a few more are importing oil, crude oil derivatives, it really becomes a great amount of burden on our foreign exchange reserves. So at the moment, every year in our budget, we generally have a cushion phenomenon which has been built in. So when crude at the moment at Western Texas Intermediate on WTI has been hovering around $84, $85 and not showing sign of any regression, in our budget, we generally might have built in for a certain cushion values. And once we supersede that, it surely is going to have its implication in terms of the fiscal deficits. So we're not alone on this, as a matter of fact. The international war chest on the tax lavied across a few countries around the world has been there for all of us to have a look. India, though being at the top of the pyramid with few others at 69%, Europe has been hovering around 62 to 64%, and Canada and US, thanks to their shale gas fracking and a few other innovative technologies which they've invested over the last 2.5 decades, has been hovering around 19%. So this whole system which we are looking at, which Dr. Santosh Kumar happened to enumerate and enlighten us with great spirit, is that we are looking at a component called as goods and service tax to replace the state tax, namely the VAT. and the center tax with the help of excise and cess. Now, the reason that there has been a serious amount of lack of inertia, or there has been inertia and a lack of coordination in the process, is because of the comfort of the tax cushion which the government, state government and the federal government has been deriving over a period of last few decades. Now, if you look at the components of on the crude oil systems, which are basically including petrol, diesel, ATF, natural gas, the tax components have been quite surprisingly been hovering around 68 to 70%. This includes the import cost of the crude oil. It includes the oil marketing company's profit margins. Once we are done with that and the product lands within the country, then that's where the time the flesh gets subdivided between the central government, namely with the excise duty, the state government with its value-added tax. And yes, we have the topping in terms of the road development cess and the other cess, which the federal government decides as and when required, and really tries and plays around with it at its own will and mercy. Now, there is a serious caveat with the replacement, which Dr. Santosh Kumar rightly mentioned. Even if they manage to go with the compulsions that they have from the legal judiciary system to over a period of time look at this through a different microscope, and if they try and get this tax structure for petrol on the highest tax slab, it would be in 28%, assumably. Diesel, just because of its implications in terms of the applications that they have in agro industry, petrochemical industry, power industry, it would be brought into an intermediate tax slab at around 15%. We're still trying to, it would just help us to bring down the buying cost to something close to 75 rupees a liter. What if the caveat of getting the replacement tax and the cess is not being voided by the central government? The paradox is here that the buying cost, as the data suggests, would reduce only marginally by 4 rupees a liter from the existing price rates. Now, this is what is more relevant. This microcosm of in terms of the encapsulation miniature and the implications of it in the society, and what are the type of message that we're trying to send back to the society? That we have lived through ages on a rule-based system. What do I mean? It is basically, we have been on the tip of the pyramid with chronic capitalism. What do I mean? The prices which have been levied on the services, on intellectual properties, and has translated into great amount of disproportionate assets which has been created for a selected few, creating a very complex web of chronic capitalism. Inherent, this has resulted in a greater amount of legal challenges within the country, and also the timely decay which has set in, because time lost is never going to decay again. And the real misery here is the opportunity which is being lost in the civilized society for the next millennial generations. So at some point of time, I think the thinking body and the judiciary would have to come hand in glove and would have to look at the social construct away from this rule-based system. I generally believe that the alignment of rule-based system cannot go away. So what is the new? So we have to look at certain values-based system, and if they are going to be co-aligned with the rule-based system, we would try and look forward for a new world. This value-based system, as a genome human, has got belief systems and construct systems. All of us ingrain and thrive on ethics, empathy, and gratitude. What is required for the community at large to really have a better construction system, as I have seen in my exposure across 3 continents, is their exposure to military services has given them a greater amount of forbearance, a much greater inherent discipline, and the fortitude to take the larger amount of challenges across in a civilized society. From my experience, I have also seen that exploring community support with the help of for skill enhancements, okay, has been a dynamic willingness of the community at large in these parts of the world has really helped the country and the community to fall in line with their value-based system to generate a better structure for themselves in terms of growth and opportunities. So these value-based system, I generally believe, is quite robust and reconciliatory. It is generally, as we have evidence from past reprisals across few continents in low and medium income societies, has been a great tragic episode for the history to reveal for a lot of other decision-making bodies to look at. Otherwise, the rule-based, as I call them, as an old wine in an old bottle, vis-a-vis to an old wine in a new bottle, it might just dispel off and really let the hat flow high with a greater amount of financial crisis inherently built into the systems, resulting in less loss of jobs and greater amount of shutdown of SME and MSME enterprises. We already have a cascade of health management spending crisis, which we've experienced through COVID. And if you look at the whole denigration of the society through social immigration, which has set in over the period of last 3 decades, it's just been a survival instinct, which has been mainly because of the rule-based old wine in old bottle concept, which we have seen through. So I wish to end my presentation by a small talk, by a small initial epic by George Santayana, who says, all those refuse to study history are condemned to repeat it. So I wish that this small highlight, let's just delve from the topic and really look at the social constructs and value-based system to be aligned and trying and conjoined with the rule-based system to create a more robust intrinsic society. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shah, for giving Thank you, Dr. Shah, for giving your slide presentation. But you have not cleared one thing, whether India should go for petrol, diesel under GST or not. Just one line, one answer, whether you consider, after with your experience in 3 continents, that India should accept the petrol and diesel in GST or not. Just tell us.
If it's a single word, I think the answer is emphatic yes, that this is the way and this is the channel to look north and go forward.
Okay, so Dr. Shah says that it should go. Because he has to leave, I will just ask one question to him. Dr. Shah, right now the government and everyone says that we are funding social services, and for lots of expenditure we are depending only on the excise duty of the petroleum products. My question to you is, and other side, our Honorable Prime Minister has gone to Glasgow summit, and there he committed that by 2030, 50% alternate energy will be used, and 2070, 0% emission. It clearly means that we will be converting ourselves on alternate energy like electric or the solar, etc. Once the petroleum products consumption will go down, and only when we will have alternative energy, then from where it means the government of India will collapse, because there will be no revenue, because we are only depending on the revenue from the oil. What do you say about this, Dr. Shah?
I mean, we have to look at, we don't have to go back to history too much. Just 50 years back, post Second World War, countries like Germany, countries like Japan, and the resurgence post Second World War is a very legendary example for us to look at it. And if you look at the resurgence post financial depression, 1929, it was just that they had decided to put the eggs sprinkled around in a few smaller baskets. So once the whole concept line, as I can see from the management and from the thinking council, is they're trying to get into an intellectual property rights where they're trying to generate alternatives which are based on intellectual property. So once you try and segregate on and look for avenues where we are trying and generating a better socio-economic capita, and it generates a better output, your tax thrust, obviously in terms of en masse, is going to enhance, number one. Number two, in terms of the whole conceptual line at RBI with the Reserve Bank of India and a few other central banks in terms of digital currency. Now, these are propagations which are being unseen, unheard of. Once we get into the momentum where we are trying to look for enhancing the revenues into the exchequer of the central government using digital funding and through intellectual property in terms of avenues of newer developments, I think there will be the mirage which has been existing at the moment would really fade much faster than anticipated.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Shah. And I am so happy that being a medical practitioner, you have very, very good command and knowledge about what is happening, and especially for the our country, and especially the petrol, diesel, GST, etc., etc. Thank you very much, Dr. Shah, for giving your time and your views. Now, I would like to invite my next panelist guest, and he is Mr. R. Khannan. Mr. R. Khannan is the corporate advisor and keynote speaker. He is ex-TCS, ICICI Bank, and Hinduja Group. Mr. R. Khannan is an expert in finance and strategy with more than 35 years experience, and during his career as a management consultant and as a key member of corporate headquarters in various corporates, including TCS and PwC, as management consultant, Hinduja Group as VP and head of strategy, ICICI Infotech as EVP, and head of strategy, ICICI Bank Group as EVP strategy. He carried out assignments relating to corporate finance, fundraising, treasury management, strategy formulation and implementation, organization restructuring, corporate performance, management, business development, and mergers and acquisitions. In his last role, he was heading the corporate performance monitoring and research function at the group level in Hinduja Group, dealing in aspects relating to planning, budgeting, performance monitoring, business development, M&A, and global economic and industry research. He is a member of expert committee in FICCI, CII, Bombay Chambers of Commerce and Industry, and Indian Merchants Chamber, or committees relating to private equity, industry, economy, banking, transportation, and environment. He is the member of National Task Force on Artificial Intelligence of CII. He had attended programs organized by World Bank, International Institute of Finance, Asian Development Bank, AIIB on international finance. He has spoken in seminars on union budget, Indian economy, banking and management, and annual CFO and management conferences as a speaker in various forums. He was in the jury of selecting best CFOs in India. He was a member on the board of studies of SIES School of Management for 5 years, and presently the member of Academic Advisory Council in Birla Institute of Management Technology, Greater Noida, and Voxen School of Management, Hyderabad. He was the president of 75-year-old Bombay Tamil Sangam for 3 years. He is visiting faculty in leading management institutes on finance, strategy, organizations, restructuring, and turnaround management. He has a personal interest in global and Indian economy and shared his ideas on economic development and economic crisis with the government stakeholders from across the world, and some of the recommendations on crisis resolution and economic development were implemented by the government authorities across the world and Indian government. He has received several awards from different organizations. Welcome, Mr. R. Khannan on our show. Mr. Khannan, you have heard what Dr. S.K. Patnaik as well as Dr. Nimesh Shah has mentioned. And Dr. Patnaik is very clear. He says whatsoever the government is saying, but it's a double speak. They are not going to bring it in the GST, and he has given the reasons. But Dr. Shah is very clear. He says that government should bring it under the GST, and he has suggested few things through his slide presentation, how the government can do and what the government should do. Now, being a person who is associated with the corporates, and you have seen lots of things, and especially, and you are involved with the so many organizations like FICCI, etc. You are seeing the conditions, what is happening today. We would like to know your views on petrol, diesel, and GST. Mr. R. Khannan, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Shri Goel. As usual, you gave a very elaborate introductory research-based speech. And I agree with Dr. Patnaik that we are not yet ready for introduction of GST for petrol and diesel. So I'll start with GST. GST, when it was introduced by central government, you know, even the earlier governments, they are talking about GST introduction for 15 years. But they always knew that if you introduce GST, it was not going to give the desired result. So when our government, the present government, they introduced the GST, their target for collection of GST collections per month, they are targeting very good buoyancy in tax revenues. So they expected that the tax revenue should start coming at 1,40,000 crores a month. I think last month it crossed 1,30,000 crores. So that was the intention with which they started the GST. And as you're all aware, the GST, what happens is that multiple levels of taxation is reduced. And if you had already paid a tax at the input level, then it is set off against the finished goods level. So to a final customer, it is supposed to be cheaper. That is the logic. So one more thing is that when you introduce GST, government was expecting that we will go for a higher formalization and financialization of the economy, wherein the small and medium enterprises which are not paying taxes, they'll come into the tax net and they'll start paying. So that is how they assumed that GST buoyancy. And one more thing, how the central government was able to go and convince the state governments was that today, as a state government, if you're getting 100 rupees, central government is promising every year, if they are getting 100 rupees as a tax, then state government was getting, then central government said, what central government will do, every year they will make sure that state government will get 14% more. So they assumed 14% growth. Of course, the assumption for GST was that our Indian economy would continue to grow at 8%. So that is the assumption on which central government agreed with state governments that 14% growth in revenue they will assure to each state government. And if there is a shortfall in collection, you know, it is divided into IGST, CGST and all that. And central government shares, the sharing ratio is 59:41. And if there is any shortfall compared to the 14% increase, central government said they will compensate the state government. Unfortunately, our economic growth didn't happen the way the assumption which was made while developing the GST strategy. So that was one big setback for the government. In fact, we were struggling to collect 80,000 crores, 90,000 crores per month. So that was a very, very big setback. And why this petrol and diesel should not form part of GST? If you come and see today the petrol price, I'm talking about November 4th in Delhi. I have a breakup of pricing of petrol and diesel. On 4th November, after the central government has announced reduction in duties for petrol, actually the crude cost was only 39 rupee 40 paisa. Crude cost, of course, it has to be processed by PPCL, HPCL and all. So freight, refining and OMC marketing logistics costs were 8.88. So fuel price actually, when you see after IOC BPCL, they do that, it was 48 rupee 28 paisa. Then actually what has happened, central government sometime back, I think in the year 2018, earlier they were collecting it as what is called excise duty. So then they converted that into additional excise duty, which means excise duty was to be shared with the state government. That is additional excise duty, and this budget also they introduced agricultural cess. So these things will be kept by central government only, and actually they are passing on only a little percentage from this additional excise duty and cess. So central government takes 27 rupee 90 paisa in the form of additional excise duty and cess. Then the dealers, the petroleum dealers, retail, they take a commission of 3.80. So the cost before value added tax, central government tax plus everything, including the dealer margin, this was 79.98. I'm talking about Delhi only. So if you look at the VAT that is charged by Delhi, actually value added tax is as a percentage of it's a value. The amount charged by central government is per liter, whereas state governments charge on the value. So actually the value added component goes up. So that was 24.50. That is less than central government. So the final price of petrol in Delhi as on November 4th was 103.97. Whereas for diesel it was 86.67. But the value added tax is the highest in India and Rajasthan. So if you look at the Rajasthan compared to 103.97 for petrol, in Delhi, for Rajasthan it was more than 111 rupees, and Mumbai it was at 109.98 rupees. So this is the structure. So we must be wondering why everybody's talking about GST. I think one of you mentioned that if you bring GST, the petrol price in India will be only 60 rupees. That is true. In fact, the price which we are selling at which we are selling the petrol is double of what is being sold in the USA today. But coming to the point, like I told you, one of the challenges of Indian government is tax collection. And India, the tax evasion is very, very high at the individual level, at the corporate level. So at all levels, the tax evasion or tax planning is very, very high, because of which our tax to GDP ratio is very low. And especially in a situation like a crisis we are in, where the ability of private sector to go and support the economic growth is very, very low, only the government has to do the heavy lifting. The government has to put all the resources it is possible. So if you ask me, again, if you look at the price of this petrol from 2012 to 2020, actually there was a negative inflation. Actually, this petroleum products, they constitute 13% weightage in wholesale price inflation index of India. So if anything goes up, obviously, this is the input for all the industries, like Shri Goel was saying. It has increased the cost for many of the companies. But imagine the fact that when the government introduced the concept of changing the price of petrol every day, before this concept was introduced, I tell you, almost companies like IOC, BPCL, HPCL were sick. In fact, you know, now Honorable Finance Minister is saying that the last government gave subsidies and they issued oil bonds worth 1,35,000 crores on which they are paying a tax and all that. So that was heavily subsidized and the companies were not doing well. Actually, they had to borrow bonds, government has to borrow bonds, and they have to support these oil companies. So once they introduce this price of everyday change is possible, that is how actually these companies became profitable. That's one. Second is coming to this increased excise duty from central government and state government. This started happening after 2018. Because when they introduced GST, they thought that they are going to see a big boom. It was not happening. So then they realized, and as I told you, 2012 to 2020, the prices of petroleum products were very, very benign. In fact, I remember in 2020, the crude oil prices went to minus $15 in the future market. And crude oil was available at $20. If you wanted to buy from Iran at that time, unfortunately, India, we stopped buying from Iran. We used to buy 7 to 8 million tons of crude oil from Iran. Now, our import from Iran is almost zero. Now, we are largely importing from Iraq, followed by Saudi Arabia. So, that was a very good supplier for us. It was even available at $20. I don't know whether, as a government, we did some hedging and we hedged our future requirement. I'm not sure. The $20 was a very good price. Now, you know, it has gone up to $84. And more than 85% of crude oil requirements are imported. So coming to GST. Last year, the central government is collected. You know, GST is separate. Yeah, that is about 12 lakh crores. Apart from that, the government has collected excise duty and cess, including other products, where you mentioned, Sri Goel mentioned 2 or 3 other products. 3.84 lakh crores they collected last year. And whereas in the previous year, they had collected only 2.38 lakh crores. So almost a 60% increase. This year, I think the government will collect close to 4 lakh crores. If the central government is collecting 4 lakh crores, state governments are going to collect almost 4.5 to 5 lakh crores, 9 lakh crores. The secret of why our Indian government, the fiscal deficit for this first 6 months was much lower than expectation was, is heavy lifting by the duties they have charged on the petrol and diesel. So because of this comfortable situation only, the government decided that they could reduce. So the logic why it should not form part of GST. As I told you, 8 to 9 lakh crores. Like when GST was introduced, we were expecting that a big buoyancy from industry. That did not happen. And now more than 50% of petrol is being consumed by industry. So if you're going to give this as a input to industry, what will happen is that out of 9 lakh crores, of course, I expect that these excise duty collections by both central and state government will come down next year when other source of revenue pick up. They are bound to reduce these rates. They are not going to remain at this level. Assuming that the oil will come down to $40 to $50 next year, then what will happen is that the crude price will come down by 18 rupees. So to that extent that 18 rupees the government can reduce. That is how from 2018 they started charging extra excise duty. So what will happen if you are going to remove this? Already government is very, very short of tax collection. So if you are going to put this GST in GST, I'm sure both central and state government will see their revenues falling by a wide margin. And already what Maharashtra government is demanding from central government, that you have converted this into additional excise duty, you had converted into a cess, because of which, and from that they are paying only, I think, 1,000 crores to Maharashtra government. Now Maharashtra government is saying, you give me 50,000 crores. Because what is happening is that now all that money is with central government. But why it should be with central government? Like I told you, this year we incurred 50,000 crores for medicines. And we incurred more than 1 lakh crore for food subsidy. And these are all extraordinary circumstances where the government will go. An easiest way to collect money, and that too, it is coming from everybody, not from just 2 or 3 people. So when it comes from everybody, then it attains a critical mass. And actually, the government is in a very good, comfortable position today in terms of finance, in terms of deficit, in terms of their borrowing requirement. So according to me, the GST as a concept, we are still maybe 4 or 5 years away from that concept. And if you are going to adopt this, I can tell you that we will have a very big crisis in the Indian economy. We will find that both central and state governments will get into a very big financial trouble, and you will find Moody's and Standard & Poor's will start reducing our rating.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, these are my views.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Kannan. I would just like to correct you for one thing. You said that Rajasthan is having the costliest petrol, and you quoted 103 point some.
111.
111. In Bhopal, the Madhya Pradesh government, I think Bhopal comes under Madhya Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh government's run by BJP, which, because you said your government, so that the rate on 31st October was 118 rupees. You can Google search and check, verify.
Sir, I told you 4th November.
So
after government is reduced.
See, I'm saying no. I'm okay.
No, I have
if you are saying
4th November.
Let's see that before 4th of this anyway. And they have reduced the rate not because they are comfortable or something. They have reduced the rate because they lost the elections in Himachal Pradesh very badly, all clean sweep. They have they have thrown away from, means they have reduced with very, very huge margin up to 1.45 lakhs in a MLA election in West Bengal. It clearly shows that the public of India, the people of India are now fed up with the price rise. The reason. Anyway, thank you very much. And Mr. Kannan has given all the details. I am not going to go repeat it, but now I would like to go directly for the questions answer session. Now my question to Dr. Patnaik very clearly. Dr. Patnaik, why this double speak? You are saying, Mr. Kannan has mentioned 4 or 5 years. You are also saying, public is also understanding. Say openly. Or you just think that people of the country or the public is fool just to say, no, 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 we will give you like a child. We will give the lollipop, just eat food, just do this. Is it a correct thing for a government? They consider all, they think that all the public, entire 130 crores are fools. Only those, some few people who are ruling the country, they are the only intellectuals in India. Otherwise, they should say, we are interested what they are saying. They must disclose the name of those states. What you say about this, Dr. Patnaik? Please unmute.
Well, Mr. Goel, your question is very pertinent, but let me tell you very emphatically that the Indian electorate are changing over the decades, have changed over the decades, and there is a lot of maturity in our democracy. Earlier in the soon after independence, for 3-4 decades, up to say the market economy was not brought into the picture, the politicians were taking the electorate for granted. But this is not a time, particularly with the digital transformation all across the world and especially in India, things have taken a different position altogether. So I feel Indian electorate are mature. Whenever there is a price increase in the essential commodities, and for that matter, the fuels, there is a lot of hue and cry which is happening not only on the social media, but is happening everywhere, starting from the common people to the farmers. So it's not that the government is not aware of this fact. If they are going to adopt this policy of price rise, incremental price rise on petrol and diesel, irrespective of the fact that whether the crude prices are going down or going on increasing, people will not take it for granted. Because the information are quite pervasive. Everyone, right from a villager to a urban guy, he knows what exactly is happening in which part of the country, which part of the world. So it's not going to happen that way. That's one of the reasons why, even though Mr. Kannan has specifically told that from fiscal deficit point of view, India has improved quite a lot, especially by taxing these fuels for a long time. And suddenly when there is a lot of uproar all across the country on the price rise and particularly of the fuel prices, they have taken this stand of bringing it down by ₹5 and ₹10. And I have a feeling that this, going by the cabinet ministers who have been talking very in favor of the bringing the fuel prices on the GST in many forums, and they are also talking openly, not now, they have been talking it for last 3-4 years, ever since GST has come into picture. So this is going to happen. This price slash which has happened once is not going to remain here. It's going to happen. But one thing you must have noticed in the last meet, if you have listened to that, the Nitin Gadkari, the Ministry of Roadways and Highways, he has said, well, if we are bringing down the excise duty, taxes on the fuels, the economy is going to grow. In fact, it's a fact. Now, see, if you are going to bring down the price of fuel, the people's consumption pattern will not change. Now, it may so happen that there will be savings on account of fuel, but then that money which the Indians are saving, now they can consume it in other sectors. So overall, if you look at from that point of view, as the critics in the government say, well, government should take a stand in bringing down the rate, excise duty and other things. So the fact that the taxes are on a drag on the economy will come true. Only when government start experimenting this thing, bring down the prices at regular intervals, probably they will be able
Dr.
to.
Patnaik, please give my answer of my very clear question to you. Why they are shying away for disclosing the name of the states? Those who are not reducing, those who are not interested to bring in GST. Central government, as you also mentioned, they are saying that we want to bring under the GST, but the state, few of the state governments, why they are not naming those few?
You see, they are not naming the few for the specific reason that some of the states are BJP ruled as well.
But that is what I want to know, because if it would have been a Congress or Trinamool Congress or Maharashtra government, they would have climbed on the roof and they would have announced everywhere these states are not doing, we are doing. But
In fact, in the last 45 GST Council at Lucknow, most of the state finance ministers, including the BJP ruled states, have objected to bring diesel and petrol under the purview of
so
GST.
basically it is the BJP and just it's a double speak. That is what I wanted to know from you. Thank you very much, Dr. Patnaik. Now my question goes to Mr. R. Kannan. Mr. R. Kannan, you mentioned that it has become a dynamic pricing, that the crude oil price will go up, the price will go. Don't you think it was to give the benefit to the private player, namely Reliance? Because before that, before the dynamic pricing, when the government, the UPA government used to give the subsidy, they were on the verge of closing. Rather, they have closed all the petrol pumps, you might have seen. And once this dynamic policy came, and the main profit goes to the private player, not to the public sector. And in any case, public sector companies are on the sale. So whether they are earning or not earning, it makes hardly any difference. The difference it is only done to give the benefit to one or two capitalists, namely Reliance or SR, and you might be knowing because you are dealing with all of them. What you say about this, Mr. Kannan? Please unmute. Please unmute.
Shri Goel, like you said, I agree that it is benefited largely the private sector also. In fact, if you ask, maybe 80% of profit of Reliance Industries comes from petroleum. Maybe they will cross-subsidize other things. But it has also benefited IOC, BPCL,
But it is of no use,
as a result.
Mr. Kannan, no use. BPSCL is on for sale. So if you are selling something, whether it is earning or not earning, it makes hardly any difference. The main profit you have committed, you have agreed, yes, it is for the beneficial, which the public, they are not openly saying. They should say that we have done it because we want to give a favor to a particular industry. Now you say about this. Yes, tell me.
Shri Goel, what I would like to say, like Honorable Finance Minister was saying, last government was forced to issue oil bonds. Because this, I will explain how it has benefited public sector. So they were borrowing a lot of money and they were issuing oil bonds. They are not making profits. So when this concept came, I agree, maybe the idea was from Reliance. They must have told government, yes, you do that. Once this concept started being adopted by PSUs also, it has improved the profitability of PSUs also.
Mr. Kannan, one answer, tell me, is the government is just to suck the blood of the public and fill up the pockets of few of the industries, whether it is PSU or the private, or they have to see the welfare of the society? Just read our constitution. It's the government role is to give the welfare to the society, not to the few of the industries, whether PSU or the private. Anyway, you have made a point and you have given the correct answer. Now I'm coming to you again. I'm going to Dr. Patnaik. Dr. Patnaik, don't you think the reason the state governments are not interested that it should come in the GST, because they are not getting the payments in time? They are getting after begging of their own due GSTs, which they are the central government take excuse and then they give like a bheek. We have received this. Now we are taking this bheek name is in social media too much, because we got the independence also in bheek. State government is also getting it's a GST as a bheek, and they have to beg. What you say about this, Dr. Patnaik?
Well, it's a very tricky question which you have asked. But I must say, with all my humble admission, Uh, well, when the government has gone for the GST in 2017, they have never foreseen a situation like COVID, which will come in 2019, 20, and 21, right? And as Mr. Kannan has rightly said, well, government was very much harping on the GST, incremental increase in the GST from year to year, but and that is how they committed to the states. They every year they will be going to increase their share of the state government by 14%. For unfortunately, this thing didn't happen because of the COVID outbreak. And as you have rightly said, the government has defaulted in giving the no the actual payment which was supposed to be made out of the total collection, the GST collection. They have miserably failed. Most of the states have raised this question in different forums, including the Finance Commission. But then the fact remains that the GST is yet to take proper root in the country, right? As Mr. Kannan has said, it will take some time. The GST proliferation all over this Indian economy will happen maybe after another 3-4 years. And possibly then the type of commitment which is the Indian government has given to the states will happen in the due course. I'm optimistic about it. But currently, as you say, the situation is that with all the COVID pandemic situation, the finance of the economic backbone of the country is down, and this default
Okay,
is going to
so you are admitting the economic condition is down, although BJP says we are doing well. My last question goes to Mr. Kannan. Mr. Kannan, LPG is under GST and the rate is 1,000 rupees. Why? It means GST will not bring any relief. The central government will still have all the say and they will manipulate the rates. When from 300 something was the rate when they took over, now it is 1,000 rupees and it is under GST. So same thing they will do with the petrol. They can do with the petrol. Why they are not doing it?
Yeah. So before going into that, your previous question.
No, I have only 30 seconds for you. Yeah.
So see, this is again related to gas prices have gone up recently across the world.
No, not so recently. It is going up from the day one. You just go through that last 7 years report card. You will see that LPG gas was going. Earlier, LPG rates were increased and all the BJP leaders were on the street, Thali Bajao or whatnot. What happened to them? Why they are not coming on the street now?
Yeah, so that is increased. On your question of why central government is not paying to state governments.
No.
I have the answer.
No, Mr. Kannan. Anyway, thank you very much. My time is over. I cannot because it is
just 1 minute.
No, Mr. Kannan. Sorry, we have a time bound. It's a live telecast. Thank you very much. So, viewers, you have seen today, the experts are of the view that the government, present government, the central government, and the state governments, especially those governments, even ruled by the BJP, they are not interested to bring under GST because if they will bring under GST, they will not have the money. Why they will not have? For what they require money? For the Central Vista project, for purchasing big planes, for spending here and there. Are we interested for that? Or we want that public should get relief? What is happening today? See the general public mood, which has been shown in the bypolls. I am sure the central government and the BJP will take it serious note before those 5 important elections, especially the UP and Punjab. If they will not do, the rates will not come down heavily, which both our panelists and especially Dr. Patnaik agrees that they will reduce the rates through excise. Then only they are going to have some chances. Other they will be rooted like what they have rooted in bypoll. Thank you very much. And today's program has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, Newsgaon se, Samvad Saroka News, Karu News, as well as it was Bharat Post News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And in our endeavor to bring to you every day new topic. Tomorrow our topic is in the media conference with Lal Goel at 10:30 AM. Are teachers competent in India? A question is, are teachers competent in India? And our panelists are Dr. Sundari Gandhi, former Vice Principal and Head of the Department of Psychology and Mass Media at Maharishi Dayanand College, Mumbai. Professor Dr. Jolly Jose is an Associate Professor at MET School of Communication, MET University, Noida. And Ms. Archana Kumar is the educator at TM Hinduja National Sarvodaya High School and Junior College, Mumbai. So please tune in tomorrow for media conference with Lal Goel at 10:30 a.m. Thank you very much, Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnaik. Thank you very much, Mr. R. Kannan. And thank you very much, in absentia, Dr. Nimesh Shah. So, and thank you all the viewers. I'm sure today's program has enlightened you, and you have come to know what is the real condition, why the ministers, and especially a stretcher like Nitin Gadkari ji, who have so much respect from the public at large, has to avoid the question which states are not interested to bring this under GST. Name it. When they can name, if for everything in a WhatsApp chats of a actor's son, why not name which states are doing, which are refusing us, and the public should take the cue, and then they should teach them a lesson if they are doing this type of cheating with the public at large. Thank you very much, and thank you all the viewers for watching our show.
Thank you.